Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today is the final weekly recap video of the 2023 Overwatch League regular season. Potentially the final regular season recap ever for the Overwatch League. End of an era seemingly coming around the corner, depending on what happens we'll see here. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's focus back on the week that was in the final week of the Western region. You can see my picks from this past week. 5-1 overall, 1-1 on those big pick games. That leaves my final season record at 78.62% for the overall picks and 68.18% for the big picks. So I'm pretty proud of that. Pretty happy with that. That is my best season of picks yet. For the regular one, for the big picks, it is not quite the best. 2021, I had 75%, but it is the second best, so we'll take it where we can. Let's move on to the stories, though, the headlines I want to talk about this week. First one, we have that the New York Excelsior get the last laugh. Like I said, 1-1 on big picks, and that is because New York, who I picked to lose to Vancouver, were able to find the victory here, locking themselves up a playoff spot, not through proxy of losing. Nope, they end up as the team with the better record than both Washington and the LA Gladiators and get one of the final play-in spots. And it was a good win for them. Obviously, they've struggled a bit in this meta. I don't think this patch is going to be great for them. I really don't think they're going to be a phenomenal team in the play-ins based on what we've seen from them recently, but they finished ahead of two teams that most people early in the year would have put them below, with both the Justice and the Gladiators. They finished one map behind the London Spitfire, a team that, depending on who you asked, pretty similar where they would have been. Maybe I definitely had New York a little bit higher than London at the preseason, if I remember correctly, but now there they both are. And it's a good story for New York, right? They were a team that no one really believed in. No one really expected to do much of anything. The first half of the year, they struggled. They got a couple wins here and there. They were able to get a spot in the initial tournament, the initial play-ins for the spring stage tournament. Weren't able to do much there. Now they'll be in the postseason play-ins, which is a good story, like I said, for a team that really did not have a lot of kind of hype around them. They had some good names, some good players, but first time this team's been a mixed roster. How is Kelling going to work in a mixed roster? Creative getting put into this roster. Obviously Fitz, his first time in a mixed roster. Some players who were kind of tossed aside last year, players like Psycho and Shockwave. OG comes in the middle of the season. It's just a very interesting team. Very, very nice to see them kind of get things together here towards the end of the season and at least make it into the postseason. They're a team that have had some very rough outings the past couple of years. 2022, a very bad year for them. 2021, outside of that random Summer Showdown appearance, not a very good year for them. So it's been a downtime for them. It's certainly one of the best years they've had in a while, and it's good to see the New York Excelsior at least get to do something to make the fans in the Big Apple at least a little bit proud of this team and what they've been able to accomplish this year. Nothing short of great. Like I said, for a team that just nobody really thought would do much. Anything they're able to do really is just kind of playing with the lack of pressure. OG mentioned that in an interview he did. Toronto, there's a lot more pressure. In New York, no one believes in you, so you just kind of go out, and if you win, you win. If you lose, that's what people thought would happen, so it is what it is. Let's move on to the next story, though, which is it's time to say goodnight and goodbye to the city of Los Angeles, the arguably most important city in the history of the Overwatch League. It was the site of both the 2018 and 2019 seasons at the Blizzard Arena in Los Angeles. Two teams called the city home, the LA Valiant, the LA Gladiators, both of whom missed out on the play-ins, and their season is officially over. Both of them played their final games on Saturday. And it's a bittersweet moment. Honestly, it's more bitter, I think, than sweet. When you think about just what LA was for the Overwatch League, right? The Gladiators, very good franchise, 3-time tournament champions, playoffs every year but this year. 2020 everyone made the playoffs, so, make that as you will. But a very kind of storied franchise. LA Valiant have had their ups and downs throughout the years, but their 2018, they were one of the best teams. They won a tournament in 2018. One of the most fun teams to watch in 2020. This year, just the storylines, the battle for LA, arguably the greatest rivalry, or at least one of the greatest rivalries in the history of the Overwatch League. So, saying goodbye to the entirety of the city of LA, even if the Overwatch League continues, seems very unlikely that either of these LA franchises will be a part of the future, especially when you consider all the stuff that's happened with the Guard. Seems like Kroenke is looking to get out of the esports business, which means Gladiator's probably done. And considering the history of the Valiant ownership and their kind of just very lack of approach to doing anything with this team for the past several years, for the most part, very likely that we will no longer have the LA-based teams competing in the Overwatch League. And so it's a sad moment, I think. It's time to lay to rest the city that built the Overwatch League, truly, the city that without we really wouldn't have the league as we have it today. And we'll see where the future of Overwatch esports goes, if Los Angeles is a part of it as we go forward. Obviously, we still have Anaheim, we still have the World Cup, and it's not 100% dead and gone. But when it comes to the Overwatch League, LA is no more. There's no more representation in the city of LA. And, sad times indeed, but we carry on. The rest of the league must go forth and leave Los Angeles behind. Next story I want to talk about is in the Eastern region. More Eastern region games this weekend than were Western region games. Let's talk a bit about what happened over there. Let's start with the Hangzhou Spark, who are going to the playoffs. It's a little complicated, it's a little odd, and the reasoning behind it. But essentially, because of the Hangzhou Spark winning their game against the Dallas Fuel, the worst possible finish that the Spark can get in their bracket is second place. And considering that up until now they have not lost a single game in the knockouts, there is no way the Dallas Fuel, who have lost 3 games in the knockouts, can dethrone the Spark. Neither can the only other 2 teams, or the only other team fighting for one of those spots, which is O2 Blast. Soul Infernal could, but just because Soul Infernal can knock the Spark doesn't mean that O2 Blast or Dallas Fuel can. So the Hangzhou Spark are playoff bound. They will be playing in Toronto. At least they should be playing in Toronto. They didn't play in the Midseason Madness. They didn't travel for that, so I suppose we'll see what happens truly, but they are going to the playoffs. They have had Dallas Fuel's number recently. I mean, they have 3-0'd them. I think maybe even 3 consecutive games that they have 3-0 the Dallas Fuel. They have not been particularly close. They have been incredibly dominant against this Dallas Fuel roster. A Fuel roster that have looked good at times this year. They have been a successful, good-looking team throughout the year, and they've had moments of really, really high-level play where you felt like this team certainly was capable of doing pretty good things. But they just cannot get past the Spark. Gushui is eternal. He is always meta. If Gushui is around, you can get away with playing Winston forever, it seems. Just the thing that they do more than anything else is be really, really good on Winston. And the rest of the team's pretty solid too, so that certainly does help out quite a lot. And so we're going to be seeing the Spark, the kings of Chinese Overwatch, if you will, competing in Toronto. We're going to get some great North American LAN action from this team, of course. This team, the majority of it, is also Team China. We'll see in the World Cup. and we'll see how they do there as well. But shout out to the Spark. They've been an interesting team this year. They've definitely not been as good as I think people expected them to be. They certainly have not been as good as I expected them to be. But all in all, they are a solid team. They're fun to watch. They've had a very good run so far this year. And so much kind of respect and appreciation for what the Spark have been able to do. And we will see where they go when we get to the playoffs. Up next, we have the storyline, I would argue, of the weekend, which is that O2 Blast not only stay alive, they stay alive in brilliant fashion with a victory, a 3-1 victory over the Seoul Infernal in the upper bracket of the knockouts. Huge win for a team that is trying to make it to the playoffs. They are the only contenders team left with a chance to make it to the playoffs. They need a lot of things to go their way. They need the Seoul Dynasty to beat the Seoul Infernal in the lower bracket. They need to win their bracket as well. I think they also need the Dallas Fuel to lose to Poker Face. So there's a lot of things they need to go their way in order for them to actually make it into the playoffs. But they're still alive. This weekend, things went well enough for them that there is still a path forward for O2 Blast. It's unfortunate the format is the way it is, where even just winning your group doesn't guarantee you a spot in the playoffs. The way O2 Blast have looked, they very much are in a realistic spot to win this group. I wish they had more of a chance to potentially play in the play-ins, or winning their group was enough to get them into the playoffs, but their third place finish back in the spring stage is going to be the thing ultimately that potentially hurts them in the long run. But they've looked very, very good. Who are used Genji? If he can play Genji, they're good, right? It's very, very simple. He is a phenomenal Genji still to this day. He's still one of the best when it comes to that specific hero. After all these years, still, he's dominating on the hero, dominating on the role. And, you love to see it. You love to see legends of the game get to play legendary things. So it's all good. It's all fun. And I'm going to enjoy the O2 Blast ride as long as it lasts, because it's been fun. And I like seeing contenders teams do well, because it shows you just how good some of these teams are. Some of the talent is here. It is phenomenal, and love to see it. Tier 2 talent isn't necessarily Tier 2 level. Some of them are Tier 1 level. They just haven't been given the chance at Tier 1 yet. Speaking of Tier 2, though, the dream is over. Dreamers, I loved this team. I loved watching them. Their meteoric rise and their unfortunate demise, losing to Poker Face this weekend, officially knocks Dreamers out of playoff contention. They seemed like the contenders team with the best chance at making the playoffs. Now, O2 Blast is the only team left alive. But boy, oh boy, Dreamers, I just wanted to shout them out because I really liked watching them. They're a fun team, like I said. They've done a lot of really good things in their time. Some of their best players made it into the Overwatch League this year, had a major impact. You look at Spectra, Easyhan, Donghoon. A bunch of those players are hoping to make it into the postseason with a nice run. So really fun season and a fun team in Dreamers. Unfortunate that it's over, but I wanted to shout them out specifically because they were my favorite contender team to watch this year. The storyline about them, they're just basically this team that kind of was put together kind of last minute, went on a really good run in the spring stage and in the spring series to get into the spring knockouts, and then to be one of the kind of top performing teams in the summer stage knockouts or summer stage qualifiers. Great team, great story. Love them. Love their branding. Love everything about them. Shout out to Dreamers. Much love to the Unicorns. Gotta love what we've seen from them. So let's take a look at the final standings for the Western region and what we have in the Eastern region. I'll just throw them all up for you. You can see them there. In the West, Reign take the #1 seed, meaning that they get the overall #1 seed in the playoffs, followed by the Mayhem at 2, Outlaws at 3. Those 3, of course, with the auto locks to the playoffs. Then you have the Uprising and Titans as the 4 and 5, followed by the Defiant, Shock, Spitfire, Excelsior, and Justice as the teams rounding out the playoff or play-in grouping. And then, unfortunately, the LA Gladiators, the LA Valiant, and the Vegas Eternal do not move on. They are the teams, like I said, that we must say farewell to, as unfortunate as it is. Eastern region, the playoffs, you can see Hunter Spark, based on their results, they are going to the playoffs. There is still one spot up for grabs, and like I said, the Soul Infernal, the Dallas Fuel, and O2 Blast are all fighting for it. We, of course, know the Overwatch League teams are going to the play-ins, so the Charge, the Dynasty, the Dragons, they should still be alive in contention for the play-ins. And there's been some confusion about how the play-ins works and how many teams actually make it. It's, as far as I know, everybody makes it, so it's not really something to worry about. But those are your standings. That's what we're looking at here. We know 4 of the 8 teams that will be playing in the playoffs. So we're still trying to lock up those final 2 spots. Who will it be? Only time will tell. That's going to be all for today's video. However, if you enjoyed and you want more videos like this in the future, consider liking and subscribing. Your support does help out a lot with the channel. I, of course, will be anxiously awaiting to see what happens. The play-ins, to see what the final 2 spots are in the West, and of course to see how the Eastern region knockouts and play-ins conclude as well. So lots of fun stuff going on here. So despite the regular season ending, it's not over yet. So that's everything from me though for today. Thank you all once again. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye bye.